Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Horns 24/7 game preview. Number 24, Kansas, heading in from Lawrence to take on number 3, Texas, back at home at DKR Texas Memorial Stadium. Tommy Yarsh here alongside Chip Brown. Let's go ahead and take a look at this game first. Number 24, Kansas coming into town. Last season, Texas won it 55-14, a year removed after Kansas upset the Longhorns in overtime at home. The Kansas red zone offense ranked number 11 in the country coming into this game. UT's defense in the red zone, number 2. So a good matchup to keep an eye on there. And Kansas coming into this season was number 2 amongst FBS teams in returning production. So, Chip, a lot already covered in those couple of sentences there. But when we talk about this Texas offense, they have struggled as of late on their home turf. He wrote a really good piece about it over on horns247.com, so check that out if you haven't already. The offense hasn't been as good as the defense has been in the red zone, only scoring touchdowns 50% of the time up to this point in the season. What do you want to see the Longhorns do there in the future?
Well, they've got to get it figured out. They got to get a lot of things figured out offensively, especially when they're playing at home. It's so weird that they've been better on the road than they have been at home, but they've got to eliminate penalties. They've had false starts on first down when they've been at home early in the game that have killed drives. They've struggled to convert third downs. They've struggled in the red zone. And we're getting to a point now in the season where Texas needs to be identifying what they do best. And now you know what Jonathan Brooks can do. You know what the receiving core can do, what Jatavian Sanders can do. So there should be a comfort level and even a sort of communication between Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian that will help them to identify their best plays when they get into the red zone. Because right now, Texas is 16 trips into the red zone, only 8 touchdowns. That is third worst in the Big 12 behind Cincinnati and Baylor. They got to come away with 6 more often and not rely on their defense to bail them out all the time. And Quinn Ewers has been better on the road than he has been at home, completing 69% of his passes away from Austin and 59% when he's in Austin, and got off to a really rough start against Wyoming. In their second home game, I think opened 1 of 6 passing. So those are some of the things that will help Texas to get off to better starts offensively, get into a rhythm, and help them in the red zone. But, 37% conversion rate on third down, just contrast that with Kansas, who's number 1 in the nation in third down conversion at 60%. That tells you kind of how far off Texas has been with their ability to convert third downs. And that's just something we probably don't really expect from an offense with this much firepower, Tommy.
Yeah, you could argue it's a little bit odd that this offense seems to play better away from home than on their home turf. But the one thing that has been constant, whether it's been home or away, is how good this Texas defense has been so far this season. I think really the biggest matchup on Saturday night, you already mentioned part of it. Kansas, number 1 in third down conversion rate in the nation, 60.5%. The Texas defense, number 17 in the nation when it comes to allowing third down conversions. They're down at 30.5%. So we'll keep an eye on that. But besides third down, where else is Texas's defense going to have to win this game?
Well, last year they did a great job of containing Jalen Daniels, kind of compressing him into the pocket and forming a really nice edge around the pocket, and then kind of maintaining, the gaps that Jalen Daniels could escape from. And so they trapped him. They trapped him in the pocket, and it really was effective. I expect it to be more of the same for this Texas defense, because this defense has answered every question pretty much at this point. And if you go back to last year's game, and I know that Jalen Daniels was asked about maybe how he's different from the game where they played last year, and Texas beat them 55-14 and held them scoreless until Texas was up 41-0. And it was the first game back for Jalen Daniels after separating his shoulder, and he probably wasn't close to 100%. And he's probably a lot closer to 100% coming into this year's game. So they'll get a fresh Jalen Daniels and they'll get a fresh Devin Neal. But Texas has been so good against the run. And I mean, limiting Baylor to 1.9 yards per carry, that's Baylor's bread and butter. And Texas just suffocated Baylor. And I expect them to come out with that same kind of intensity. And you look at this defense in the red zone, this is where it gets really phenomenal. Opponents have had 10 trips into Texas's, 20-yard line or, inside their 20, one touchdown. And that came in garbage time against Rice. So it's been phenomenal what the Texas defense has been inside the red zone. Anytime an opponent gets into scoring range, the Texas defense has answered, limiting them to field goals, forcing 3 turnovers in those 10 trips inside Texas's 20 so far this season. So this defense has done an unbelievable job of complementary football. And right now, I think you have come to expect it. And a lot of it's because of the big guys up front, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins. You're getting good rotational depth at the defensive end position with Barron Sorrell and Justice Finkley and Ethan Burke and even Jet Bush, who had a really strong game against Baylor last week. So, and then in the back end, Steve Sarkisian, I asked him, okay, Jalen Catalon only plays 13 snaps against Baylor. I said, is he on a pitch count? And Sarkisian said, no, we're 5 deep at safety and we're rotating guys through, getting really good experience for a guy like Derek Williams, who played over 30 snaps last week and will certainly be counted on next year. So that's been a real luxury that Texas has been able to rotate at the corner position, at the safety position, at the defensive line position. Not so much at the linebacker position, but a little bit. Mo Blackwell played last week after he had been out injured for the previous couple games. And also you saw Anthony Hill Jr. continue to play more of that weak side linebacker position as he grows into becoming the heir apparent to David Benda at that position. So the defense, what can you say? I mean, they've just been phenomenal so far.
Chip, you touched on this a little bit. One of the bigger things that's different from last year's blowout win for Texas coming into Saturday is that Jalen Daniels is fully healthy. He's not coming off an injury. But we also mentioned Kansas brings back the number 2 overall in the country returning production. So this is somewhat the same team, but at the same time, vastly different from what we saw a year ago. What is it that sticks out to you when you watch this Kansas team that's vastly different from what happened last year in Lawrence?
Yeah, it's all on defense. Last year Kansas's defense was atrocious. I mean, they gave up over 200 yards rushing per game. Texas ran for 427 yards on Kansas last year in Lawrence. Bijan Robinson ran for 243 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jonathan Brooks ran for 100 plus and a touchdown. And so, this Kansas defense, Lance Leipold went into the portal and appears to have found 4 massive upgrades on the defensive line. When you talk about 2 transfers from Minnesota, Austin Booker, the defensive end, and Gage Keys, the defensive tackle, as well as Devin Phillips, a transfer from Colorado State at the defensive tackle position. as well as a linebacker, MJ Brown, I think, from Bowling Green. Those guys have made an enormous difference for this Kansas defense. And we'll see. We'll see if the Texas offense can get things going, or if this Kansas revamped defensive line is going to be problematic. You look at the back end of Kansas's defense and their secondary returns. Kenny Logan, their best player at safety, Kobe Bryant, Cobee Bryant, who had a monstrous hit last week against BYU that was on all the highlight shows. He's been excellent for Kansas. He scored a touchdown against Texas 2 years ago. So this is a veteran Kansas defense really across the board, because with the transfer portal players on the defensive line, who are all experienced players, in addition to a secondary that completely returns, this is where the biggest difference in the Kansas Jayhawks lies. It's on the defensive side of the ball.
All right, Chip, time for everyone's favorite part of this segment, game predictions. You take us away first.
Well, I don't know that they can replicate. I don't know if the Longhorns can replicate what they did in Lawrence last year. I think the Kansas offense, defense, maybe, the slow starts from Texas, you kind of have to, I guess, count on that until we see differently. But I'm going to go with Texas 31, Kansas 17. How about you, Tommy?
All right, so you got 14 points. I'm thinking this one will be a little bit more high scoring, just because, both offenses have been very good. And the Texas defense has been very good. Not entirely sold on Kansas's defense as a whole just yet. So I'm going Texas 38, Kansas 26. So a little bit of fireworks for me coming on Saturday at DKR. That'll wrap things up for us here on the Horns 24/7 game preview. I want to thank so much for joining us here today. As always, be sure to stick around horns247.com and the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew and Chip Brown, my name is Tommy Yarsh. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.